Hey everybody, thanks for joining me. Eric here, Gearhead Daily, and I wanted to walk through my latest Vpin build that I thought was pretty cool. I'm pretty proud of it. And the first build that I made, I learned a lot of things from, and it was a pretty good build, but it was a bit of more of a budget build. This one has a much nicer TV, much nicer upper and lower box, and a much more robust computer, plus a few nicer things on the inside that I'll get to in just a second. But I did want to show you this particular build just before I'm done. There's a couple things that are not quite done. First thing that's not done is I do need to fill these panels here on the side so you don't quite see through them. I do need glass, and I do need a filler piece here. But for the most part, as you can kind of tell, everything here is pretty much done. I decided to go with the Medieval Madness theme. It's one of my favorite games of all time in real pinball, and I just love the theme, and I thought, well, if I'm going to go for as much realism as possible, given the limitations of the Vpin software, I want to make a cabinet that is real as possible. So I went and made a standard wide body cabinet, which is, 23 3/4 across. And I did make this a tad shorter because, a lot of people will have large aprons up front, which I don't fully understand why people will put a 5 or 6 inch apron just to then have your cards be up here. So I decided I wanted my TV as far back as possible, just like the real thing, because in the real cabinet in a real pinball machine, you're going to have your title cards right in front of your lockdown bar. So that's why I did it that way, made it a little bit shorter this way, so I have a much smaller piece between my TV and the top of my box. So, back box, pretty cool. I'll show you the back of it in just a second, the way I engineered this to make it as easily accessible as possible. I'm a believer that all things were going to break eventually, so hey, you might as well figure out how to make it as accessible as possible, and I'll show you how I did that when I turn it around. Pretty neat stuff. But I will say I'm pretty proud of this, right, which is the wrap around. You can't even see a seam. I mean, if you look real closely, you can see those lightning bolts not perfectly lined up. But on this side, holy cow, let me tell you, you can't even see a seam. I'll even zoom in a little bit. Can't even see the seam. Lightning bolts line up perfectly all the way around. Pretty proud of that. So, back box, got the same theme. And you might be wondering, what is the construction of it? This is melamine, and it is plenty strong. Don't let people tell you otherwise. Many cabinets are made of this stuff, and this is not the IKEA, super, hole-filled type of melamine. This is the high-density melamine. So the reason I did that, and the reason why this is the best application for this currently, because A, I'm not in a bar, and I'm not going to let my friends beat up on it, so it's not going to see a lot of heavy use. It is pretty heavy, by all things considered, but, it kind of comes with the territory. The other thing is, melamine has a very flat black vinyl surface that is sandwiched between particle board or MDF. In some cases, mine just happens to be high-density particle board. And what I did was I decided to kind of cover all this with a vinyl, kind of a kind of glue-on edge banding, and then put the graphics over the top of it. Pretty neat. Got myself a 15 by 15.9, I think. Just a cheapo Chinese display, but it runs. This is just basically a little tablet, and then this is a full-on Asus gaming monitor. And I'll show you how I did it and how I put these in there to make these very solid, but look very good, by the way. So back to the construction. Black legs, black side armor. Got the launch button. Launch button is not programmed, obviously, because we don't have any lights on it. But I did light up all of the lights up front, including the coin doors, because I have a plan for the coin doors, which is, if you notice in VPX, there are 2 buttons to add coins. One is, the dollar, you add $1 to it, and it'll add 4 quarters, essentially. And that's going to be the plan for this one. And then this one's going to be your regular 1 token or 1 quarter at a time. So that is my current plan for this one. Not done yet, but, future build, right? So what do we have on this side? We have our start button, if it wants to does say start on it, I promise. Add coin does say extra ball, and it does say exit here. So these are the 4 buttons I have on the side. I've got my launch here, which activates the plunger, and then an actual plunger that activates the plunger. So let me open it up for you. You can kind of see inside. Another plan I'd like to have is I'd like to have the door switch to illuminate some LEDs so I can kind of see what's going on in here, so I don't have to raise and lower the TV every time I want to do it. So before we get into here, let me show you the back, because that I'm pretty proud of. All right, so I've pulled it out a little bit, and what I've got here is I've got a bulkhead switch that basically just powers on the monitors, all 3 of them at the same time. I don't have to turn them on or off, they just turn on with power. And then I have a little button on the inside that I push, and the computer and everything else turns on. I'll show you how that works when we go inside. But for now, we've got 2 fans in the back, and I haven't had any issues with heat. Actually, pretty cool air coming out of there. Can't hear it, pretty quiet. Now, here's the part where I'm saying things need to be accessible. Again, I always build things to believe that they will break. And when they break, you need to fix them. So how are you going to easily access the things you need to access to be able to fix them? So here's what I did. Gave myself a little switch, not a switch, a little latch here that is normally, this switch is normally meant for here, so the back box when it rocks back and forth, but I've got this permanently mounted so that I don't really need that function because I don't plan on moving it very often. So I've got the latch, and then what I've done is I've just created a little piano hinging system here, and I'll gently drop it so that I don't hurt anything. And then what we've got in the back is we have our TV. This is a gaming monitor essentially, and then we've got a just a 15.9 little tablet essentially. And they have been routed in here with a small rabbit all the way around so that this will fit perfectly inside there. And then I go back and I change the graphical settings on there so that it lines up with the other side. It'll make more sense when I go back to the front. We've got our 2 speakers, and then I did the exact same thing for the back monitor, the back glass. You can see we have very little room here, maybe a 1/4 inch or so, but this one is also rabbited in there. Harder to see because I cut it so close that it's almost like a pressure fit, just kind of fits right in there. But I decided to kind of hold them in with a couple L brackets anyway. I thought about putting a piece all the way across, but actually this is a more elegant solution. And again, not going to see a lot of abuse. The only person who's going to probably abuse it is myself. So in that case, I don't think I needed to make anything that was going to be for bar use or drunk people banging into it or anything like that. So pretty simple build. From here, we've got our pass-through. You can see my computer down there, and then basically just 2 bolts holding the back box on. So the back box kind of makes sense now. You got everything rabbited in here. So when you come up to the front, you see very little in the way of the TV edge, or even in this one, you don't see any monitor edge all the way around. And if you're wondering, so I did rabbit this in here. This is edge banding that I put on the inside to make sure that the edges looked nice. So a couple spots I'm not, we don't need to talk about too much, but for the most part, from 3 or 4 feet away, looks pretty darn good. So I can't do this with one hand, so let me open this up and I will show you what's on the inside, and hopefully maybe this will help you with your build, or who knows, but hopefully this will give you some sense of what went into this particular build. All right, we're back. So let's look on the inside. My goal here was to make this as clean of an install as possible. Nothing's ever perfect, but you do the best you can with what you got. So coin door, got my lights all wired up there, and let's kind of start from the back and kind of move forward. This is the PC. I've got I think it's a i7 with a 3070, GeForce RTX 3070. Runs 120 frames, no problem. Probably could even go a little bit more, but the limiting factor happens to be this monitor. So on the right, basically what I've got is I've got that pass-through bulkhead that comes into this electrical outlet, and the outlet is color-coded, as you can tell. You've got your master always on, which is red, so blue is kind of your master power, and then you've got your always on, and then you've got your kind of slaves. So you've got, you know, your master blue and then green slaves. And I've got this set up to where all 3 TVs and monitors will turn on when it sources power. So those turn automatically. I don't have to do anything else. Then I've got the master hooked up to the PC. PC, when the button is pressed, all of these start, which in this case only happens to be 2 outlets. These outlets, one of them goes to this power supply, which then powers all my lights, essentially. And then I've got another one that runs over meow. And then this one powers all of my amps. So you've got my main amp, I've got my front amp and back amp, and you might be wondering if you're new to this, well, why do you need so many amps? Well, you need the first main amp to power your front speakers, yeah, and then you need your front amp to run your SSF, or in this case, these are just exciters. I've got one on each side. Tried to get one as close to the flipper button as possible, because usually your flippers are kind of like right here and your solenoids are kind of like right there. So you try to get it as close as possible. And then I've got the back amp, which then powers these 2 guys back here, these 2 exciters. And then what I've got from the main amp is, I can't really trace it, but you've got your bass speaker, like a car speaker, it's like 35 bucks. And then here you've got my bass shaker, which is connected to my front amp. So if there's any shaking that needs to go on or happening, that will happen. The latest, total nuclear annihilation, which is fantastic for this, because when you blow up the reactor, the whole thing just starts shaking violently, and I love it. It's great. So kudos to you VPW guys. You guys do great work. I've got my surround sound card here. When I purchased the PC from a friend of mine, he says, oh yeah, no, don't worry about it. It's got surround sound. Unfortunately didn't. So I just, instead of futzing with it, I just bought the card. It's a lot easier to deal with. And now I know where kind of everything goes. KLZ 25. Here's all my grounds, right? Meow. And then, you know, again, just try to keep things as simple as possible. So what I've got here is, some people have commented, oh yeah, you watch the Way of the Wrench videos. No, this wasn't the case, but it turns out that's what he does too, so fantastic. We both had the same idea. That's awesome. I've seen his videos, does good work. So basically it's got a little prop here with a little L channel, and then I've got a little slot here where the L channel fits in so it doesn't bang down or hit anything. So basically, that is the interior of the build. So, other reason why I decided to go with melamine is it has a very flat black surface, so you don't have to paint anything. Paint, to me, is fine if you do it right, but unfortunately, I'm not the greatest painter in the world, and what happens is it never looks just right to me. So, melamine and its black vinyl coating is absolutely perfect right out of the box. So we've got if you want to put side blades or mirror blades or whatever it is you want to do, it not only goes on very well and very easily, it looks pretty good too if you choose to just leave it as is. You might be wondering about fans. So here is an intake fan, which need to clean up that wire a little bit, but basically that's my intake fan, so it's blowing this way, and that goes into 2 of the fans that you already saw in the back, and those are blowing this way, so it kind of creates an effect this way. I want the airflow going that way. I have yet to put my hand in front of either of the fans and notice any warm air, so airflow, not an issue. We'll see if that changes when I put the glass on, though, so that might be a different story. let's walk through the software just a little bit. And if you're curious, I have a list of all these parts down below in the thing. You got to do the magic finger routine. So anyway, let's take a look at the software. Before I forget, one other thing that I thought was interesting was I decided to put 2 USBs. Now, last build, I put the USBs underneath so that I could, you know, from under here, put my USBs or say a keyboard or monitor or something. I could just plug in a USB. I decided to do it here to make it a little bit cleaner. This runs to the 3.0 USB ports, and I've got it plugged into my KLZ25, which many of you might also have plunger issues, which I do as well. Sometimes it'll run for 5-6 hours and totally fine, and then sometimes it'll just crap out on me twice in a row. So not sure what's going on there. Multiple cords, running things, all sorts of issues. So anyway, that is what it is. But I wanted to share off at that point, and one final point, which is the construction of this is... The construction is all 100% dados and rabbits, okay? So everything here has been recessed a little bit here, and then if we look underneath, everything has been dadoed or rabbited where appropriate. So this build is extremely strong, even though some people might disagree with my choice of materials. So let's talk about software just for a second. Pinup Popper, this is my favorite software. I think it works very well, and that's why I keep kind of coming back to it. So we've got 150 games or so I've kind of curated myself, and I find the action of the 120 hertz TV to be exceptional. I had a TCL Walmart 4K. It's fine, but this stuff much better. So wherever possible, I do get the color ROMs, and I also try to learn the rules as much as possible, because I think, you know, just finding the fun in the game is learning the rules, and what does this do if I push this, and what does it do if I hit that button, and what if I do it in this particular order. So lots of different ways to have fun with it, but I'm using Pinup Popper, and I don't have any playlists going. I don't have any kind of special things. There is of course, the Forbidden Table. I just love the art. I know people have done the pup pack on this one. I just love the background of the art. I couldn't do without it, so this is great. Whoever made this, kudos to you. Excellent work. So, the Forbidden Table, of course, and, you know, try to cherry pick just the best ones. VPW, of course, always gets first download and first play. But, yeah, there she is, Pinup Popper. Working great. Had several people on the forums who have been very nice to me, who have helped me and worked through some software issues. You know who you are. Don't want to out you because, you know, don't need you bombarded with other people looking for help. But you know who you are. You've been very helpful to me. Thank you. I appreciate it. And there's my build. Hope you like it. And if this inspires you to go out and build one, fantastic. Drop me a note, and I will see you guys later.